trying to tune in when something feels right and then respond to it and try to seize opportunities. I feel incredibly fortunate the degree to which that's worked out.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to the Trap Set. I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Abandoned Mansions by my guest, Jay Robbins. Robbins began his career as the bassist for DC punk band Government Issue. He rose to prominence as a member of the highly influential band Jawbox. It was in this band that Jay first showcased an exceptional gift for memorable yet unorthodox vocal melodies, counterbalanced with jagged, angular guitar hooks. After Jawbox ended its initial run in 1997, Jay went on to co-found bands such as Burning Airlines, Channels, and Office of Future Plans. For over 20 years, he's also been an in-demand engineer and producer who's worked with artists such as Ponytail, The Promise Ring, Braid, Clutch, Jawbreaker, and X-Hex. Jay operates Magpie Cage Studios in Baltimore and released his first solo album, Unbecoming, earlier this year. I spoke to him in downtown Los Angeles prior to a show with the recently reunited Jawbox. And now my conversation with Jay Robbins.
I do have like a very hippie, like I get a hippie thing in my mind about it where I'm just like things happen a particular way for a reason, you know? So that's what I thought in this case. I was like, well, I want to do both of these things and they seem to both be happening simultaneously. So, you know, I mean, I worked on the record for 4 years. That's plenty time to like, just let it kind of marinate for a little while I do Jawbox. And then the other thing that's cool is if we bring it out on the Jawbox tour, it sort of puts it in front of people, and probably more people than if I went out on a tour to support it as, you know, Jay Robbins or whatever. So
right, exactly. It's bringing more attention back to you. And then if you wanted to start getting more aggressive about your own stuff afterwards, you have all this behind you.
I don't want to be aggressive about anything.
What do you want to be? You want to surf it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I do. I just want to be a surfer.
Hey, where did you grow up?
I grew up in, that's so funny. Look, we're doing it. Suddenly we're doing this thing.
No, we're surfing, bro.
We're surfing, bro. We just surfed our way into the beginning of a podcast. I grew up in Silver Spring, Maryland. Mm-hmm. So just like a little ways outside of DC, but just far enough outside of DC to really not be in DC, to really be in suburban Maryland, like shopping mall suburbia. Yeah.
What did the Robbins parents do?
My dad was a car salesman. He did all kinds of things. He had many jobs over the course of my, youth, and they were all sort of related to selling cars. For a while, he worked at National Automobile Dealer Association, which was much more of like this weird, I don't know what they did, but anyway. So it was always around selling cars. And then my mom was a homemaker, but my mom had a weird, she had this mysterious past that she would allude to, but she never talked about. And I think that there was a lot of music in her youth. And I think that when she was younger, she was kind of a wild child, and she was real tomboyish, and she was definitely not the favorite child. And my mom was like a pretty seriously messed up human. But I think part of what was, I think the odds were kind of stacked against her because of her generation.
Like, so she came from a big boomer family?
She came from, like, her, when was she born? She was born in 1930.
Oh, wow.
4 or
That's
1936.
pre-boomer. Yeah. Wow.
So her parents were like much more, like her mom was second generation Swedish. Like her mom's mom was like lived in Sweden, and her mom grew up in Sweden, and then they, my mom was like a super bitter individual because she had an older brother who was like the golden child, especially because he was the boy and he was like real high achieving, kind of superstar. And she was the child who was like, oh, and we have a daughter, And so she had a lot to prove. And she also, I don't know. But anyway, I think that in her youth, she used to talk about, singing with like a jazz band and stuff, but she would never get into detail. You'd never get her to talk about that stuff.
Like she was ashamed of it or something?
Yeah, just kind of like, I think she must have reached a certain age and just been like, well, I can't do that anymore because that's not what people do. I have to do what people do.
When you grow up, one doesn't sing with a jazz band anymore.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I don't, it's weird. Like she was a very hard person to know, So, but I know that there was I know that she had a lot of musical acuity, and she had a lot of like passion for it that was just kind of like choked back in here, because anytime I would do anything creative, my mom was there like in a shot just to like, sometimes in a very helpful, like supportive way to like, like I was a big artist, like drawer when I was a kid, and she got me into an art program in high school. That was really like the beginning of it was like from which everything else in my life has literally flowed.
Did you go to Ellington?
No, I went to it was art center at my high school. It was just an art magnet program in Montgomery County, the school system, and which Joe Lally went there actually too.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, so so things like that. Like my mom would really go to bat for me in like, she got me to put a portfolio together and then get into this magnet art program where I met all sorts of great weirdos who became my best friends that I'm still friends with. And, if I was interested in music, she, I had to like hassle her for piano lessons, but she was like, all right, let's do that. And the other flip side of that coin was like, she would be kind of creepy and sort of hang out and watch me play piano and just like kind of hover. Mm-hmm. And be like, I really wish that you had something else that you were interested in doing.
Right, because in retrospect, this is her latent desire coming through her child.
It was totally like living vicariously. Yeah.
What about your dad? Were you close with him?
I got a lot closer with my dad toward the end of his life, actually, because both my parents are dead. They both died in their 60s, and I always had a good rapport with my dad, but my dad was not very present,
You mean physically or emotionally?
Yeah, like he was
out doing stuff.
Both. He was often gone, but like the best thing I could say about my dad is like he was really proud to be my dad. Mm-hmm. Like I had that feeling like that this was an important, like he was super psyched to be a dad, and he was always really proud of me, but he was never really present. Like, yeah, neither. He was around physically, but like, like I don't have really great life lessons from my dad, except that I've learned in retrospect by contemplating, or from either of my parents. Right. Actually, all my life lessons that I get from my parents are from contemplating the ways in which they couldn't handle being parents.
Yeah, I've thought about this a lot lately because my dad died a few months ago, and I went through a lot with him because he had a major stroke about 10 years ago, and I kind of had to help run his life. And first we were hoping he would get better, and then turned out he just never recovered and wasn't ambulatory for the rest of his life, and everything else kind of atrophied. But in many ways, I felt a distance, like we weren't able to connect, especially as I got older and more serious about music. But I know that he was trying the best he could with the tools that he had received, and he had given me a better life than he had as a child. So
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm at with.
Were your parents musical? Like,
that.
do you have like?
No.
And were they like that? Because I think this is such a generational thing that it's like music is kind of disreputable, and you're going to ruin your life if you apply yourself to it.
I think so, but I think that they, they were a little bit younger than your parents. My dad was born in the 40s. I think that they supported it when they thought it was a hobby, but then when they found out that I was really serious about it, I think it scared them, but they still supported it. They were just scared, because it's basically like telling your parents you want to be a gambler, a professional gambler or something.
No, for sure. I always frame it in not exclusively, but I always think of a generation that's like, I think of like the Protestant work ethic, and I think of like the American, there's like this real like,
I'm from the Midwest too, which is,
right.
very,
and like a real like, my parents' case, like especially my mom, a real like ingrained, like this idea about scarcity in that generation, that it's like as opposed to, a more hippy dippy notion that there's enough for everybody.
That there's bounty. Yeah.
Right. Like you attaining something doesn't take it away from someone else, and vice versa. Right. And you just like, whereas I know that my parents were saddled with that, like
the zero-sum game paradigm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
When did your belief system start to diverge from that?
I was really lucky, because the fucked up, bizarre thing about it is like, even though like, I'm describing these people who definitely were just marinating in these like horrible notions about the way the world works, when it came to raising me, and I say that they weren't, it's just weird. Like when I say that they weren't emotionally available, like they weren't, they were like kind of crappy parents in a way, but in another way, they were amazing to me, because my childhood was a complete bubble in which they just allowed me to be in a fantasy world. Like I was like superheroes, comic books, monster movies, science fiction, music, drawing all day long, anything that I wanted to do. It seemed like, like I would catch shit from my mom because I didn't do my chores, but she would be screaming at me while she just did them. So I'd be like, well, okay, I guess I'm going to keep working on this drawing now, So it was just weird. Like they gave me no preparation to function in the real world. Although particularly my mom like frequently bitched at me about how I was unprepared to function in the real world. But they did everything to encourage, they were like, I would make stop motion animation movies in the living room and just take up all this space. And like, if I needed a camera, I was spoiled.
How was your confidence?
My confidence.
Were you an only child, by the way?
Well, I have a sister who's 11 years older than me.
Okay.
And she's my half sister from my mom's first marriage. And she was emotionally, she was much more of like a mother figure to me. Like she was a person who was like available and supportive in a way that you kind of actually need as a human. And so my mom's idea of structure was all over the place. So it was like my confidence was super high within my bubble, and outside my bubble, non-existent. So I really was like super, I hit a certain age, like I think when I hit puberty, I just really withdrew. And like I had friends, but I was socially terrified of like, as if like everybody else knows the rules of how you're supposed to get along.
And you didn't know them?
I don't know the rules.
Yeah.
And if you ask about the rules, you're really fucked. So I just like hung on the edge, and that's why I always say, like, I always feel like meeting punk rockers in my art class was like the fucking lifesaver, because at last it was like, and the other big thing was like, I never ever did drugs. And I always, cause I had a real thing where I was like, there were a few kids, like one of whom had been my best friend when I was really little. When I started like getting weird and getting into like sci-fi and monsters and kind of like didn't grow up into the next level of like social development, like this dude completely turned on me. and fucking hated me, and he would like wait after school to beat me up, and he would chase me home and stuff like that.
Wow, I wonder what that's all about. It's like it wasn't enough for him to just move on to different friends that had shared interests. He had to distance himself.
Right, he had to like victimize me big
Yeah.
time. Yeah, but no, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I? Oh fuck!
You're talking about meeting punk rockers and
Oh yeah,
That's
right.
cool.
So I had this thing where I was like, it was one of the things that kind of drove me further musically. Like when I was looking for things to get into, it was like I knew, like from the moment that I went to see Star Wars and I heard the music in Star Wars, and then I was like listening to the soundtrack, and it was painting these incredible pictures in my head, and I would just spend hours listening to it. And that got me into classical music and into like, especially modern classical music, which was all I was like deep into it. And
You mean 20th century music?
Yeah. And so like, sort of symphonic soundtrack music, and then the music that those composers were cribbing from, and then this whole other language. And I was like, good. Part of it was an actual musical attachment, like hearing this thing, like complex sounds and like the ways that it like pulls your heartstrings and stuff. But part of it was like, this is mine, motherfucker. Like this is some shit that you don't understand. You guys all have this thing that you all understand together, and it's all like tribal, like AC/DC is like your music of your tribe that you listen to when you're waiting to beat me up. You know what I mean? And I'm like, you can't have this. So it was very much like, I was like a kind of messed up kid.
I talk about that a lot on this show because I feel like music is not the social signifier that it once was. Mm-hmm. Because now everything's available to anyone,
Right.
So for better or worse, I don't think you have AC/DC kids and John Williams kids.
Right. Right.
In my experience,
it's a great joy.
Lots of kids don't even know. Lots of kids don't even know what they listen to. They just listen on YouTube to songs, and they don't even form a bond with the artist per se.
Right. It's like the flip side of that. Like nobody has this personal thing that they like have in their heart. Kind of. They just go kind of consume it and go, it's okay. I forget about it.
It's content.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think it's a net positive or negative necessarily, but it's just an interesting change, because I think for your generation and mine, music was such a big social signifier.
Right. Yeah.
At least it was for me,
Right. There was somebody, I forget who said, maybe it's like a bumper sticker or something that somebody posted on social media, but they were like, I was into punk rock when it was still called Hey Faggot.
Yeah. So what was the first punk music that you started listening to?
Well, when I was in art center, I was there with Damon Locks and Derek Bish.
Damon Locks of Trenchmouth fame.
Yeah, Damon is the person who,
and is he in a band called the Eternals?
Yeah,
now?
he's in the Eternals, and he has a project called Black Monument Ensemble now. That's amazing. That's like, I saw them play last October, and it was. I mean, I guess it's not a them. It is a them. It's like a huge collaborative thing with dancers and instrumentalists, and somewhat improvised and largely composed by Damon, but and singers like a small choir kind of thing, and it was amazing. But yeah, so Damon, I was in high school with Damon, and it was him and Derek Bish and Chris O'Connor. Were kids that were going to shows, and by the time I was in high school, I was deep into my like H.R. Giger phase of like painting. So I think we kind of bonded over this sort of antisocial kind of like creepy artwork thing, and comic books a little bit too. And I think they kind of threw me a lifeline, and they made me this compilation tape. And it was cool because the theme of the comp was that, at least for a lot of this comp, it was like punk, but it was very broad definition of punk. So it was like Teardrop Explodes was on there, and like The Clash, and there was Black Flag was on there.
What about, speaking of Geiger, Frankenchrist era Dead Kennedys?
Well, that was after that.
Oh, that was after, yeah. Okay.
But what else was on that tape? Joy Division, and I mean, it was like a real who's who, but it was like extremely eclectic. And the common thread, as much as they could do it, was they tried to put what they thought of as like classical instruments on it. So there's like the Black Flag from Everything Went Black, where they start with the piano, where he's like smashing on the piano, right? Okay, we're rolling, you can play or whatever, and that's on there, you know. And Specials were on there, and Fun Boy 3, and like a lot of like really was a great comp. But anyway, they made me a couple of tapes, and then I was just like so psyched to meet other kids who thought it was cooler not to drink or do drugs, and who weren't, you know, I was like, there's no secret rules here. Like, these guys are just like all over the place. It's awesome. And they were nice, you know, they were cool. It was like I found my tribe, you know? So I started going to shows with them. And then I was like, I remember going to see, my first show was Damon and Derek had a band where they both wanted to be the singers. So the band had two singers, and it was at King Kong Chinese restaurant in College Park. And it was, you know, there was like 15 people. It was all just Silver Spring friends of theirs. And then the first big show that I went to was Government Issue and TSOL at Wilson's, and Marginal Man at Wilson Center. And that was like amazing to me. I was just like, I want to be on this planet, you know?
And then you did. You played with Government Issue.
Yeah.
Didn't you play bass with them after that?
Yeah. Like just 2 years later, I was back from I went to NYU for a semester for college because I thought I wanted to be in film school. I thought I wanted to do something related to film because I was a super big film kid, like just crazy film buff. And so I went to NYU for one semester, and I blew all my money, and I realized that there were people who were much more serious about making films than I was.
I thought you were going to say, I realized there were people that were much more rich than I
was. Yeah, that's the thing you realize when you try to live in New York. Yeah. And then so I came home, and it was the summer, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I hadn't really been in a band, and I
never been in a rock band, really.
I played bass with a band that Derek had. When Derek left for college, I played bass in his old band, Punchline, for like a minute.
You mentioned that you took piano lessons as a child. Had you kept those up and
No. I was a terrible student.
Okay.
Because I was used to improvising all the time. Like, I just started playing. Like, I don't remember a time in my childhood when I wasn't playing on the piano. And then when I started really listening to music, I would just go take tapes to the piano and try and transcribe. Because like listening to Star Wars, right? Listening to passages in a lot of well, like John Williams.
It's very lyrical.
Yeah, and Williams and Jerry Goldsmith and
Jerry
Bernard
Goldsmith
Herrmann
is my favorite.
Yes,
and Herman's
high five
one
on
of
Jerry
my favorites
Goldsmith.
too. But yeah.
Goldsmith is. I feel like he's incredibly underrated. Like, it's just. I'm in awe of Jerry Goldsmith, and I love. You know, they had Goldsmith and Williams had the same composition teacher. But so I started I started to I was seriously like listening to this shit compulsively, and I'd be like, the thing that I always loved is like to have a theme, and then be able to do just one thing, like inner voices. I realized that's what it was. It was like, you know, okay, you have a theme, and then when you vary the theme, the ways of varying it that suddenly turn it from, you know, like expressing the nobility of this character, but suddenly, oh shit, he's in trouble, or he's like got this tortured feeling or whatever. And I'm like, how did they do it? I'm like, oh, some inner harmony worked its way into a really stressful zone. Like, what is that? And so I would start listening at the piano, and I'd be like listening for where the inner harmony, where inner voices, you know, the parallel, you know, where things would change. So it's good. That makes me really, I always think, I'm always happy about that because I feel like it really developed my ear for harmony. But I spent a lot of time doing that and then just trying to transcribe stuff. And my mom had this real attitude where she was like, she had been forced to take piano lessons when she was little. So she was like, I'm never forcing that on my child because it will make you hate doing music. And I was just...
That's interesting.
Yeah, which sucked. And then finally I was 13 and I was like, you might have noticed that I play piano all day, every day. Like, maybe I should learn to do it properly. But when I was a terrible student. I just couldn't, having having found my way to like access all this incredible harmony, to just go back and have to do Hanon exercises.
Maybe you just didn't have the right teacher.
No, I mean, well, I had a great teacher. He was this like total like goateed kind of hep cat jazz guy. But he also was really happy that I didn't care about doing the exercises. He would like get me to, he'd just be like, what have you been working on? And I'd like play him some shit that I learned off of, you know, the Chinatown soundtrack or something. And then, you know, and he'd be like, yeah, that's cool. You know, that'll be $50, you know? I didn't last very long with the lessons because I just couldn't handle the mind-numbing repetition. So I never got to be a good player. I'm just a faker.
And then as far as bass, how did you learn how to play bass? Just by ear?
I got a bass. Yeah, I started, basically when I learned the punchline songs because I think the guitar player must have taught them to me. But then when I came back from the first semester at NYU, I was at home and I was broke and I was like, I don't know how I'm going to go back to school. And then I went into Smash, the Georgetown punk rock record store, and there was a flyer taped to the cash register that said government issue needs a bass player. It had little pull-off tabs, right, with a phone number. And I was there with Damon and I was like, I should just take this tab and like just call, because I'm not going to get in, because I had a Music Man, or, you know, Music Master bass, like a short scale bass. I didn't know it was short scale. I didn't know shit about any of it. it was my bass. So same as I had done with like soundtrack records or whatever, when I started getting into punk and I was listening to punk records, I would like I learned, you know, Bela Lugosi's Dead, and I learned like Rose Garden, the flip side, Rose Garden Funeral of Sores, which was a John Cale cover, and you know, Joy Division bass lines and whatever. But anyway, so I had no clue. So I got this, you know, flyer, and I was like, it would be really funny if I tried out, and I got in, and I tried out and I got in. So then I was like, well, good. I'll wait and I'll like defer college and see what this is like. So
what was it like?
It was so fucking nuts. It was crazy. I mean, I have no idea how I got in, but I do remember, I remember going to Damon's house and trying to learn the songs off of he had all the GI records and I only had like one or two. And so it was like, we're listening to the record and I'm like, I think it goes like this. And he's like, yeah, I think you're right. And we were just like comparing notes on it. And then I went and I went and had an audition and in a group house basement in Rockville, and I have no idea how I did, but they were like, all right, you're in. I was like, what the fuck?
How did it feel emotionally when you were playing that music? Like, did you have a similar sensation to when you saw them play 2 years prior?
It took a long time for me to not just feel terrified, because that was the difference between, because that was a social interaction.
Right.
So I was
You're not an observer anymore.
Yeah. So I was like, in practice, I don't think I had any feeling about it because I was working really hard. And then going to play a show, like I think the first show I played with GIs was in Pittsburgh, and I had to borrow an amp from the opening band, and the bass player in the opening band was this guy, Mike Lavella, who I've since got to know in the interim. Is like, I mean, we became friends, and he's a fucking excellent guy. He's a real character. But at that point, the first time that I met him, he really wanted to play bass in Government Issue. And he was like this super extroverted, like real strong personality. And I was just like this super nebbish. And I was like, oh my God, I have to ask him to borrow his amp. Like, you know, like I really like Tom, can you ask him, you know, like I was such a sad sack. And I played the whole show with my eyes closed, and I was just, you know, fucking terrified. But I think when the show was over, I was like, wow, I played a show. I played a GI show, like, and I think I did good. I don't know. And then it got, you know, gradually it got easier and more fun. And once Pete, because Pete Moffat wasn't the drummer then. It was Sean Saley, who was only in the band very briefly. But when Pete joined, it became much easier because Pete was very like nurturing, and he was very, you know.
Was he really good already?
Yeah, he's fucking phenomenal. I remember seeing, actually it was funny, I thought about this when we just played the 930 Club and this Jawbox tour, because 930 Club used to be Worcester Radio Hall. And one really memorable show that I saw at Worcester Radio Hall was the Bad Brains, and Pete's old band Dove opened. And at that point, Pete was like super skinny and like really ripped because he was a bicycle courier, and he had shaved his head. And I remember standing watching them with Damon and just going like, it's the Silver Surfer. Yeah. Silver Surfer is playing drums in this band. He's fucking awesome. You know, like we were both like, whoa, because he was so fast and so precise and just like really like, you know, with like, and he made that Pete Moffat face.
Pete, you're fucking hot, dude.
You know?
If you're listening to this.
He did. He's got a face. He's got this face that he does. It's like, you know, kind of squinches up his face, and he looks real squinty. But anyway, but yeah. So Pete was amazing, and like Tom and John were both like, when Sean left GI, I definitely remember Tom was like, Pete wants to do it, you know, like Pete Moffat is going to play. He was super psyched on it. But Pete was amazing to me. Pete has a real gift for like, he has real patience. He definitely did with me, you know, like he literally had to explain to me, like if we were writing something, how to listen to the kick drum pattern and trying to write, or, you know, because I was writing at that point. Also, all I wanted to do was play Rites of Spring, which is all like super lyrical, fluid, flowy, you know, melodiousness. And it's not, you know, or punk, or like the stuff that Mike Fellows wrote for GI, which is like pretty punk, but the bass line is the riff. Mm-hmm. And like, it's not, the drums follow the bass. And, you know, I didn't understand about any like normal rhythm section writing, and Pete was super patient. You know, he was awesome. So
earlier you said you didn't have any confidence outside of your bubble as a child. When did you start feeling confident as a person? Like, was playing in GI confidence inducing?
I probably last week.
Oh, really?
No, I mean not, but probably. I mean, yeah, no. GI was super. I mean, it was super great.
Did you feel comfortable with yourself as a person during that time?
You know, it's been like an increasing, like exponentially increasing since that time. Mm-hmm. You know, for sure. Mm-hmm. But part of it is like also, it's simply practical. It's just like you can't just be a drip. You know, you can't function if you're just like constantly questioning everything you do, mm-hmm. you know? And so there's still like a little voice on my shoulder that's just like, you know, like if I sit down to write lyrics.
Yes. That's when that voice comes for me too.
Right. So it's really like, so Leonard Cohen, what do you got? You know, I'm like, all right, fuck you, you know, forget it. I'll do this later. But even in simple, you know, like normal, it's going back to that weird childhood bubble. It's like, you know, like I get ecstatic when I can do real normal nuts and bolts, you know, like, I mean, I'm trying to think of a good example, you know, like replacing the float inside a toilet. I'm like ecstatically happy to be able to do that, you know, because, or like anything that's just like simple and practical, there's a voice that's always just like, you know, over here that's just waiting for me to blender. So,
do you think that it's possible to kind of try to engage that same kind of approach when you're writing music, like thinking of it as just one practical step after the next?
Yeah, I think so. But it's weird. It's like, it's a never ending thing, right? Don't you think? Do you think about that? Like, were you talking about like craft as opposed to inspiration?
Yeah, because I mean, I work in the capacity of a composer for films and TV. It's kind of like my main job,
right?
And that has always been easier for me because it's like replacing the float on a toilet in a sense. Because I always say it's more like being an engineer or an architect and less of a sculptor, right?
Right.
Like, because I have a plot of land that someone else has given me and certain specifications that they've given me and certain emotional requirements, and I have to fit something within that. So it's basically like there is an element of art to it, but mostly it's like, okay, how is this going to function and how can we get it done?
You have very clear parameters of like, get me from point A to point B.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And then it's also, there's a deadline. And it's usually a quick deadline, so I don't have time to indulge my neuroses and like, say, okay, well, let me figure out drum sounds for a day, or like, is this the right melody? It's like, I've learned from doing that, I just throw something on the page and then build around it, and usually I can make it work at this point. Yeah. So, but then when I'm trying to write lyrics, right, like what you were saying before, that voice that says, oh, well, yeah, just so you know, Leonard Cohen exists. So, like, why wouldn't anybody just go out and buy a Leonard Cohen album?
Exactly.
But then my answer to that has been like, well, Leonard Cohen obviously is a master of the craft, but he's also just being authentically Leonard Cohen. And if you can try to do that yourself and, be authentically yourself, then if nothing else, you'll make a cathartic statement. And that's what this is all about anyway. It's not about measuring up against these people.
Right.
That's how I rationalize with it.
Right. But it's not, it's the same. It's funny because I have in my mind now, I have an echo of that thing of like scarcity, right? Scarcity versus plenty.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the same thing.
There's also the notion of like separation between him and you. And it's like, well, he's kind of part of you and we're all part of the same ecosystem in a way as musicians or as people. And like these kind of separations are somewhat arbitrary, and it's just like, I think the voice is just, it's there to protect you, right, and keep you safe, and then that's the
in a way that's actually not beneficial.
Right.
It's a fear voice.
Yeah.
No,
it's like a primal voice.
Yeah.
My therapist says I have to. She says I have to, engage with that voice and treat it like the child that's crying in the back seat, and tell it that we're going to keep it safe, but we're in charge.
Right. Nobody's going to get hurt.
It's okay. You're all right.
Image.
Yeah.
It's going to be okay if I use an obvious rhyme. Yeah.
Was there another band that you were in between GI and Jawbox?
I tried when GIs broke up. I tried out for Scream because it was another band that, I love when I started going to shows. I loved GIs. And then I got into GIs, and I was like unbelievably lucky. And Scream was another band that I was like really, really loved. And I tried out, and I didn't get in. And then the guy that got in, there were only two people that tried out. It was me and Ben Pape, and Ben got in, and he was much more of like, he had the kind of chops of a like quote unquote real like rock player. He's a great player, and he totally had this they were trying to be much more of a rock band, and he was a rock guy, and it was the right fit, except that then they went on tour and it turned out to not be as good of a fit as they wanted. And I think they weren't, from what I understand, they didn't get along, and then they got to LA and he got poached to be in this super group called the Four Horsemen. And at which point he was like, my ship's come in, so long, suckers. And there was only one other guy that they could find who knew the songs, which was me. So I quit my job
What was your job?
I was working at Utrecht Art Supply as the shipping department of Utrecht Art Supply. I was like shipping art supplies. So I quit my job and I flew out, and then I was in Scream for like 2 months, and it was super, super fun. And it was completely the opposite of GIs because
was Dave playing drums?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it was really, really great because the whole project of GIs was to be, because John Stabb was such a wild card, like he kind of couldn't be pinned down. And it's like he was only sort of like music was kind of a tangent to what his real whole thing was. Like John was not a musician. John was John.
He had an overarching thing.
Yeah. So the rest of us sort of hunkered down in this almost military way where we got to be really good at doing fast transitions. We didn't count the songs off anymore. We would just kind of give each other a look and just start on one, like we were over the top we were really trying to attain military precision of what we did. And whereas Scream was incredibly free and like loose in a really cool way and much more, it was just really wild. Scream was a very wild experience, and it was really, really cool. Even, things like calling out covers like on the spot, and you just hopefully can figure it out, or like even the way that Dave would play. There are certain songs where he would just like pull the tempo way back, to create this kind of drama. Like he would just open up the space so much, and I'd be like, what the fuck is happening? And then push forward. It was very like, it was really wild. It was really different, but it also was a bad fit for me. And the whole time I was like, am I just gonna be this young guy who joins old guy bands? Am I like, that's maybe not that cool. Everybody that I admire started bands from scratch. So, and it didn't matter whether they knew what the fuck they were doing. They were just like putting it out there and seeing what they could do with it. So, and at that point, Kim and I were a couple, and she had a real strong desire to start a band, and I had a real strong desire to play guitar. So,
had you played guitar before?
Only I had a guitar, and I was really terrible at guitar. But I was like, I'm gonna, that was the next thing that I needed to figure out. And it seemed to me,
your process of figuring it out? How did you learn how to play guitar so quickly?
I don't know. I just did it.
Would you do it with? Would you write your own stuff, or play along with other stuff?
I'd like imitated Dag Nasty. Was probably like my number one thing, like learning GIs and Dag Nasty songs. And I remember when I was in high school, Chris O'Connor taught me some chords, but but I don't remember. I remember feeling in GIs, feeling like you can't be the bass player. Like I wrote a bunch of stuff for GIs, but it never sounded like I thought it was going to sound. But by the time it was arranged, I was like, well, I guess I didn't really write this song. I just wrote this bass line, and we all turned it into a song, and it worked out. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking like, well, if I played guitar, maybe then I could have the idea, and it would come out in the end more like what I picture in my head.
And what about singing? How did you get into that?
I secretly always thought that I had a good voice because I could sing along with like Screamin' Jay Hawkins. and I just ended up singing one song on a GI's, and I knew I was good with harmonies. Like Pete and I worked on our harmonies a lot in GI's. So, which also was like to be a foil to John, because John's musicality was so specific to him, let's just say, right? And then there was a song that Pete wrote that John was just like, I'm not going to sing on the heavy metal crap. And I was like, it's not heavy metal crap, it's a good song. And he was like, well, I'm not singing on it. And I'm like, well, I'll sing it, fine.
Wait, what song was that?
It was called Crash.
And now we'll cut to it.
Oh no! Oh, don't play that song.
easy to forget, strung tightly between the old and the new, between the friends, the precious few who seem to care.
Hey folks, it's Joe here. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm a gigantic fan of Minnie Riperton's 1970 classic concept album, Come to My Garden. This week, I've been listening to Come to My Garden on my Sonos Play 5 system, and the experience is so vivid that I can smell the flowers surrounding me. The Sonos was incredibly easy to pair to my Bluetooth phone, but it also has a 1/4-inch plug, which I love. Check out the Play 5 and the entire Sonos range at sonos.com. All right, so you and Kim were together.
You're evil.
You and Kim were together, and you started Jawbox.
Yeah.
You got into guitar and singing, and what was the first song that you wrote?
Tools and Chrome was the first song that like I wrote it when I borrowed a 4-track from somebody, and I did a demo of Tools and Chrome that was acoustic guitar, and I think Mark Schellhaus played drums on it. Actually, Mark was the drummer in Beefeater. He was in our same like circle of friends. Like he was sort of a little bit. He was in a band with Damon, and I think that's what it. That's a very dim recollection that I have now. But anyway, so I managed to get a recording of Mark playing drums on this 4-track, and then put acoustic guitar. And so that was the first demo that became the song that we worked on.
Did you feel a different dynamic? Did it feel like you had more ownership of that song than anything you'd done for GI?
Yeah, it was a lot closer to what I was really excited about it because it was how I heard it.
Was it scarier?
Only writing lyrics, probably, but I don't even remember what that was like. I mean, I think those lyrics are pretty rubbish, but like.
You think they're rubbish?
Yeah,
So you judge your old work?
Oh yeah, I hate everything that I ever wrote. It's terrible because I don't hate everything I ever wrote, but I.
Do you aspire to not hate everything you ever wrote?
I would
do you
to.
aspire
I would
to
like
be
to not
kinder
hate.
to yourself?
Huh?
Do you aspire
Yeah.
to be kinder to yourself?
Yeah. Do you hate your lyrics? Or if they're in the record, then they earned. The
I only
right to
made
be there.
one record,
Right?
It hasn't even been out in the world.
Yeah.
But they were all so personal.
Yeah.
That I don't hate them,
Yeah.
and I think that they're okay. I think they're servicing, like they are the vehicle for expressing a certain thing that I was feeling,
Right.
And I think I adequately got that out. I don't think that I'm, writing poetry on the level of Leonard Cohen, to use your example,
Right, yeah,
or
I mean,
anybody, and I don't think that they're particularly clever either. I was
Right.
listening to some songs that were written by like professional brill building songwriters, and
Yeah.
it's like everything is constructed in a very clever way.
Yeah.
But I think I don't have a sense of dread when I listen to them,
Right.
and I've been practicing for shows. I think it's a good sign that I don't feel like icky about singing them. Like it feels good when I'm singing them.
Yeah.
So I think it's definitely like a good first attempt at writing an album. But that said, I waited until I was 38
Right.
to do it,
Yeah.
because I had crippling self-loathing and doubt
Right.
before that. So I guess
Yeah.
that means I made some progress.
Yeah.
Personally.
No, I like. Yeah. So no, I aspire to be satisfied that I expressed something true in a way that someone can feel connected with and understand. And then also, like, of course, like really good craft is something that I'm like in awe of, and I always wish for that too. But like, I can't, like in the Jawbox tour, there's certainly we're not going to play Tools and Chrome because I can't sing it,
Yeah.
Like I can't sing, I just know too much about wanting to sound impassioned about something and not even being sure what I really was trying to say, or coming up with an image and not really knowing what I was trying to connect it to, but colliding enough things together that I could then sort of hang it on whatever was troubling me at the moment and have a catharsis by singing it. But I wrote a lot of embarrassing lyrics that, you know, but I almost hate to hear myself say that, because if somebody hears it,
loves it.
Right. If somebody hears it and they like it, then it absolutely is wonderful that it reaches them, you know?
Well, that's the nature of music, right?
Right.
I mean, it belongs to anybody that hears it. I mean, it's kind of like you're not doing all the same things in your daily life that you were doing when you were whenever you were 23 or whenever you were writing that stuff. So of course it's not all going to resonate with you. You're a different person.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, whatever. A lot of those lyrics are cribbed from books. You know, they're imagery that is literally from, or it starts with like they're about a J.G. Ballard story, and then there's something in that Ballard story that really spoke to me, and I'm trying to like grab onto that connection and just like hold it close to me. You know, like that's
cool.
Well, good. It doesn't feel cool, you know. I feel like what I want to do.
Do you like Wuthering Heights by Kate Bush?
Yeah.
So there's a song about a book, or it's actually about the miniseries version of it. I found it because I'm obsessed with her. Or like The Seventh Seal by Scott Walker is about the film.
Right.
I don't know. I like that kind of shit. It's cool.
Yeah. J.G. Ballard was really like helped me out a lot.
There you go.
He helped me through. He's a weird one to cite as someone who helped me through personal difficulties, but like something about his protagonists who are always marooned in an ever-changing situation that they're partially terrified of and partially, you know, seduced by. That's like absolutely, I'm like right there, you know, and then combined with his incredible poetry of his language, which some people think is, you know, kind of antiseptic and clinical and weird, you know, but I think his just floors me, you know. Like I'm hooked on J.G. Ballard for life, right?
Which Jawbox songs have you been enjoying playing the most on this tour?
Everything that we're playing. I honestly think everything that we're playing. There's a couple that we changed, that we've sort of fleshed out the arrangements in ways that we would have never thought of before. And like Grip, which is one that's totally a J.G. Ballard inspired lyric that's from the first record, that song's way better now. We treated it almost like we were arranging a new song. Without even talking about it, it just sort of fell out that way because I think it was a song that nobody was especially attached to. And it's way better. It's really fun to play. I feel good that we brought something new to it that elevated it, you know. But they're all like, it's good. Like we worked really hard on things like the vocal harmonies and trying to keep our tempos together and listening to each other more and like really, you know, it's been quite enjoyable.
How does it feel interpersonally now that you're kind of back together after all these years?
It feels really good. It feels way better, I think, than, because I'm like, this is a thing that I've said to a lot of people too. Like, I feel like when you're in your 20s, no matter how much you purport to have your shit together, like there is like within you is just like a screaming void of madness where you're just like trying to get a grip on anything, you know? And at least for me, that's definitely true. Just like shit was haywire emotionally, like personally in my 20s. And so the whole time that our band was together, I feel like, you know, whatever. I feel like you do the best you can, but then with the benefit of a lot more time of knowing each other and having individually been through a lot, and individually all been through a fair amount of like fairly serious shit, and still being able to like, you know, we're still, I mean, speaking personally, like I'm still friends with all those guys, and I have been, you know, through the last couple decades and through some really hairy shit, and I've seen them go through some hairy shit, and it's just like, it's cool to have that energy and bring it now to bear. Like that's the number one. These are people who I now have known as friends for a long time and ridden many roller coasters with, you know, emotionally. And that's the energy that we can now bring to having the band. So it's so much more. I mean, people definitely still carry their baggage and they have their ways and ways that they push each other's buttons, but it's or have patterns that they fall into. But I see all of us working so like being conscious and working so hard to overcome those habits and be present and like be a team, be really good to each other in ways that we know we can and we should. And it's, I sound like such a...
It sounds great.
Like it's fucking awesome. It's really awesome. So
it also seems like when you're in the middle of band turmoil and you're young, it seems like the end of the world and everything, all the stakes seem extremely high, which they are at the time. But then when you when your parents start dying, or you go through all these other challenges in your life, or your marriages break up, or when real shit happens, then I think it tends to put things into perspective, and you're like, oh, actually I can deal with this other stuff. Like, nobody's dead, we can figure this shit out.
Right. I mean, like, philosophically, there's a lot to chew on, the idea of selling out to a corporate superstructure versus, growing your little DIY garden and being grassroots and stuff. Like, that's all real.
You're talking about like when you guys signed to Atlantic?
Well, I'm talking about it more in the sense of like when you're in your 20s and you have these things that loom so large, these ideas that, and because you care about them really passionately. And so, and the fact is, like, using that as an example, of course it's worthwhile to talk about it, because it's worthwhile to talk about what's real. Like, that is a debate about what's real and what's important, and how are we going to live in the world. So that's all important. It's but it's also it has its real dimension, but it also is highly academic. It's cool shit to chew on. It's important to be able to chew on it, but it's really not that important compared to like the health of your children,
right? Or
your like emotional well-being, and like maybe it's an aspect of how you like, of like the struggle to just be present in the moment and like be fucking good to people, but like, these are the things that are, but I mean, it's highly complicated, like it's actually amazing in the way that it's unfolding right now. Like, it feels great right where it's at right now is fucking a dream. It's so awesome. So I'm kind of like, that's great.
Yeah.
I've been on the verge of tears at some point of literally every day of this tour. Our friend gave us this app called We Croak. It's based on the idea that in Bhutan, they say you should contemplate death 5 times a day for a happy life. So it just 5 times a day gives you notifications about...
no wonder I'm so happy.
But anyway,
no wonder I was such a happy child.
So we've been trading when we get a good message, we've been trading them right at fucking Stephen Hawking. Remember to look up at the stars and not down at your feet. Try to make sense of what you see and wonder about what makes the universe exist. Be curious, and however difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. It matters that you don't. It matters that you don't just give up.
Wow.
Sorry, I'm really tired.
You don't have to apologize for crying about something beautiful.
Yeah.
That's podcast gold.
I think about shit like that every day, because I think, there's context in my life for like a quote from Stephen Hawking to like knock me off my feet, right? But yeah,
I think about that a lot too, because as someone who's atheistic, I think and depressive, I think I've definitely, I've definitely gone through some sort of nihilistic phases in my life, or there's been like undercurrents of nihilism, and remember not to give up. Is that what he said?
Mm-hmm. It matters. it matters that you
hold
on,
don't give up.
let me quote it correctly. Can't believe I'm quoting from an app. I'm quoting Stephen fucking Hawking, okay? But yes. However difficult life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. It matters that you don't just give up.
Mm-hmm. That's been a hard lesson for me to learn, but it's something I strive towards.
Yeah. No, I mean it's fucking huge. It's like it's the thing.
Do you feel like giving up a lot?
No. Because I mean, giving up what? Like I don't think. It's because I just have a weird attitude, I guess. Like I'm not ambitious about anything. Like I'm really not. Like I don't, like we were talking about people who have life plans earlier, or like they set an agenda or something. I mean,
you're prolific, but you're not ambitious. I mean,
I don't even think I'm that prolific, but I just don't want to stop doing. Like the thing is, I figured out that if I'm not making music, right, or I'm not doing creative things, but specifically making some kind of music, like starting with a germ of an idea and seeing it through into a form that's a song that I can play for somebody or whatever it is, right? I will be miserable. It doesn't work for me to not do this. So if 5 people want to hear it, I mean, that's discouraging, but that's 5 people. That's, whatever. If nobody wants to hear it, which I sometimes think, like, I mean, I'll play in Baltimore, I've played solo shows to 5-10 people, and I have a choice to be discouraged about it, but I'm playing a fucking show. I wrote songs. I'm playing them I'm singing them to somebody, where's the problem, So, and that's kind of, I mean, and I, because I feel like the idea right now in the culture that we're in, for better or worse, the idea of intrinsic quality, and the intrinsic value of things is completely separate from their value in the marketplace, and whether they, are whether they're sold to a mass audience. Like I've always felt that way, but was
probably more so now than it has been in certain times.
Right, because I'm really lucky that I know a large number of people who I count as friends who are phenomenally talented, who do beautiful work that's honest and great, and it's worth your fucking time, right? And they have, who's their audience? Me and the other people who are also doing the work, and nobody else. I know for a fact, whatever. There's bands whose records changed my life, who nobody even knows about anymore. But if I Bruce Hellington, if you're listening, 9353 changed my life. I mean, he knows that. But 9353 is unknown to the world at large, and will never be known.
Do you perceive that 9353 is unknown largely as an injustice?
No, I just think it's how it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Because if you start seeing it as an injustice, then it makes life even harder.
Right, exactly. It's ridiculous. It's just how...
It's not like people are consciously ignoring things that we think are great. It's just certain things resonate.
Right, because it's like the value. It's like placing the value where it doesn't belong. Because then it's like saying the value of your music is that it made you a rock star.
Yeah.
And then you're famous and rich.
Well, that's what some people want.
Right. I mean, that's fine for them if they want that.
Yeah.
But in terms of how it is good for the world, it's ridiculous, right? What's really important, I'm just saying, this is what I think. What's really important, what is vitally important, is that, shit, I'm getting choked up again. Fuck it. Is that, Derek, oh man, fuck. Derek and Damon and I saw 9353 and had our minds blown. And it's still
And now you're all still doing creative things.
right.
I saw Jawbox and Burning Airlines and had my mind blown.
Right.
Seriously.
And that's exactly
when you were talking about listening to John Williams scores, I mean, I was like, I actually do I mean, I'm not on his level by any means, but I do that for my job.
Right. I'm in
And
awe of you.
listened-
That's what I wanted
I was
to do
listening
that
to
so
Burning
bad
Airlines
when I was a kid.
When I was at that age, I was listening to you. So isn't that weird how that works?
But that's the closest thing to religion that I have in my life. Absolutely. Is that like that thing of like those connections that like the sparks are going off from one thing and there, you know, like this giant like proliferation of inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea why I'm so choked up. That's crazy. I think it's like I'm exhausted. I've been away from my family for a week, which is a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I can't seem to wake up later than 6 a.m. You know,
Yeah.
Everything is so like it's like I'm having a total pinch me dream like experience of this tour, and you know I went to Museum of Jurassic Technology,
That's
which
so
always
awesome.
just take whatever. Everything is a little too much for me, you know. And now we're having this conversation, so it's all.
When I was 17, my mom briefly worked for a now defunct airline called Midwest Express. And as a benefit, I got to fly anywhere I wanted standby for like $15. So I was friends with Jeff and Chad and Devin from Faraquet, and they were touring with Burning Airlines, and you guys were not coming to the Midwest, or either my band was going to be gone when you were coming to the Midwest. So I just one weekend came and saw your show in Atlanta. I just flew to Atlanta.
Oh fuck!
And that was life changing.
Maybe I knew that.
And there were
Maybe
not
I
many
couldn't
people
remember
there.
that.
It was
Yeah.
actually a pretty decent sized club, and there weren't that many people there.
Yeah.
But so I'm just saying, germane to our conversation
Right.
of there not being many people, it had an amazing effect on me. Both of those bands.
I think all the time about when there was a time I've seen Mark Eitzel now at house shows in Baltimore twice, and they were both really awesome. But more so in light of the fact that there was a show before that Janet and we heard Mark Eitzel played a show at the Golden West Cafe, which is a Mexican restaurant, like a Tex-Mex place in Baltimore that used to do shows. And mostly like punk and hardcore shows or like local scene bands and stuff. So we saw that he was coming to Golden West and we're like, oh my God, we got to get tickets right away. Because in our mind,
He should be huge.
right,
Yeah.
in our minds, like Mark Eitzel is a major figure. Like, I mean, and in the mind, of the minds of everybody that we know. But so we were like, we're on it. We got tickets and we went. And, there's like maybe 20 people. And there's a dude playing pinball in the back the whole time and people taking drink orders in the bar behind, and it was him and the keyboard player that he toured with. And that's it. Just his voice, and there were maybe 20 people listening, most of whom were sitting down. And I could tell that he was not psyched about it, but it was one of the most transcendent shows I've ever seen. And we were both in just floods of tears, just like his voice was filling this room. And I was just thinking like, how is this possible?
Mm-hmm.
But, and then what was fortunate is that show, he hooked up with a guy, with our friend Scott, who does house shows in Baltimore. And he was like, well, you could do this a different way and play for, it won't be a lot more people, but they'll be there for you and it'll be awesome. And it was henceforth. But that show was really amazing to me because I was just like, that dude's a giant, he's a titan and that's who he plays to. But the important thing is that he's singing and
He's not giving up,
right, yeah. And it certainly connected with me and Janet because we were just like floored, As far as the idea of giving up, it's like, the only thing that there's no such thing as giving up because giving up is just like, okay, well, what, go die, and you can't if as a parent, giving up. Like, what is
Right.
that? That can't happen. You know.
Let's talk about becoming a parent.
I mean, my whole life I didn't think I wanted to be a parent.
See, I'm 39 now, and I'm facing that same struggle, like internal struggle. What do I want to be a parent or not?
Well, I was pretty sure that I didn't, based on my upbringing. I was like, I will never marry anyone, and I will never be a parent. But meeting Janet made me decide that I should take a leap of faith, and to not take a leap of faith would basically be saying that I want to just, basically saying I don't want to grow anymore or like achieve anything more than what I already know and understand.
Right.
So.
And having a kid is a big leap of faith too.
Yeah,
I mean, I think so. Like the nihilistic part of me is like, oh, this world is doomed.
Right.
Why would I bring a kid into it? But then on the other hand, it's like, oh, well, if you have a kid, then you're tethered to the world in a way that you weren't before, and maybe you can like try harder to make a change or to.
Right. I mean, it creates stakes for you, and then you also can think, like, well, somebody has to keep it going. But I mean, it's a never ending. It's Ouroboros, right? Like you can't ever for me, like a lot of those kind of discussions, I can argue both sides of it endlessly.
Yeah, me too. But that's why like having timelines and things like that are helpful.
Yeah.
Lucky land, every nightmare's passing fire. Future's grand, the sycophants and practice liars. Lucky land, a chic by any other name with brighter brand.
Hey everybody, it's Joe here. Anyone who knows me knows that I am a connoisseur of kombucha. And this week, the Trap Set is brought to you in part by the greatest kombucha on the planet. I'm talking about Better Booch. My personal favorite flavor is Cherry Retreat, but they have several other flavors if cherry isn't your thing, and they can be found at betterbooch, BOOCH.com. For people that don't know, Janet is Janet Morgan, your collaborator, your life partner, your wife, and you met her when you were on tour with Burning Airlines in England, and she was working at Southern Records.
Exactly.
Correct? Yeah, and then I kind of got to know you guys when I was living in D.C. or in Tacoma Park. But anyway, all right, so you were 39 years old, and how did having a child change your outlook?
It's changed it multiple times. It continues to change. It's like it doesn't stop with having the child,
right?
Right.
But is it like what some people say, where it was almost like a switch flipped in your mind, and you felt like a different person, or you were living in a different reality immediately?
Yeah, I mean, I was pretty. I was overwhelmed by the responsibility of it for several months, actually, and I didn't cope. I didn't do stupid shit, but I just inside I didn't cope with it really well. I was just like really, it made me real. Like the reality of having a new human to be responsible for it took a very long time for me to come to earth. And then also when Callum was 6 months old, he was diagnosed with spinal muscular atrophy, which means that, he's wheelchair bound, he's largely immobile. So it went from thinking that we had an understanding of the responsibility that we were undertaking to really getting clobbered with a new kind of responsibility that we didn't understand and had to start to learn and figure out how to go forward with. And coupled with the fact that with spinal muscular atrophy, the outlook is usually, when it's diagnosed at that young, the outlook is usually really bad. So typically for his actual diagnosis, he would have made it past the age of 2. We had a child who we thought might be gone within 2 years. And so we really, it really knocked us for a loop. And then also not knowing, and at that point there was nothing that conventional medicine could offer to to improve his chances. There were little things that they could do, but basically the message from doctors was, give him the love you have to give while he's here, because we really don't think, at that point, even when we started seeing a SMA specialist, he said to us, there will be a cure for SMA in our lifetimes, but not in Callum's lifetime. Just with the outlook that he's not going to make it long enough to see the cure, so that was a pretty crazy curveball to have thrown at us.
And so now he's 13, so he's long outlived the initial prognosis. And the science has, as I understand it, the science has advanced.
Yeah, things have improved tremendously for SMA, because the research was ongoing this whole time. So there's a treatment which helps in his, it's amazing actually with there's a I'm wondering how much I should explain. Basically he is missing. He has a gene that's defective that prevents his body from producing a protein that helps his brain communicate with his major muscle groups. So within everybody, there is this gene, this SMN1, or the SMN1 gene that produces the SMN1 protein. And then there's another SMN2 protein that's identical to SMN1, but just doesn't do anything. It's like the lazy cousin who just sits with his feet up while SMN1 does all the work in a able-bodied person. But a person with SMA just doesn't have any SMN1 to speak of. So your brain can go, hey, fingers, pick up the glass, and the messenger isn't there to get the message, right? And SMN2 is just sitting with his feet up like, hey, it's not my problem. So this treatment now that has been developed over the last few years and was fast-tracked by the FDA basically gets SMN2 to do the job of SMN1. So kids who get this drug, immediately after their diagnosis can go on to develop and basically be able-bodied kids who have SMA. On paper, they have SMA, but in terms of their hitting their milestones developmentally and their physical abilities, as long as they're getting this drug, they're able-bodied. And they don't really know what happens when the drug goes away, but presumably once it's out of the bloodstream, then they start losing function because they still are people with SMA. In Callum's case, he's had, years and years of muscle atrophy, so it's difficult to imagine that he'll start gaining abilities, but he won't lose any. And then the other thing that's happening is they have gene, and the other thing about this drug is it's insanely expensive, but we are between Maryland Medicaid and the drug company. We have to sort of bounce back and forth every year, and sort of Maryland Medicaid decides if it has a policy and whether we fall under the policy, then we get the drug for free. But then they sort of go every year. They go, do you or don't you? And then if they decide that you're not in the program, if they decide that they won't cover it, then the drug company will cover it. They're like, if you can prove that your insurance won't cover it, you'll get it for free. So it's very lucky, but it's also every year you have to kind of.
It also puts you in a strange position where it's disincentivizing you from earning too much money, maybe.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other kettle of fish.
Yeah.
It's too big of a subject even to get into. It's like a whole other podcast.
I mean, I've had a lot of experience with that, not with the child, but with my father, who effectively I had our relationships, reversed.
Yeah.
Because he was immobile too, and we had to navigate through the medical system and figure out where's he going to live. I couldn't provide, none of us kids had the resources to just hire somebody to help 24/7.
Right.
So then we had to find a nursing home and try to find one that wasn't fucking terrible and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, and then figure out how to get it paid for, and then they would not pay it, and then you'd have to argue with them to pay it.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we're really lucky that Maryland has a very strong social safety net still. But it definitely does. There is a tightrope walking aspect of this whole thing that is important to not think about.
Yeah, because there's nothing you can do about
right.
it. So,
but we've been. I mean, knock on wood, we've been like super. It's we're very grateful for our good fortune thus far. But anyway, the other thing with SMA is that gene therapy, like there will come a time. We're like on the cusp of it right now.
where his genes can be edited.
Right, where literally they'll just give him the gene to produce SMN1, which is mind-blowing. And that still may not, it may not change things materially for him, because once motor neurons die, they are gone and they don't come back.
Although maybe they'll figure out how to fix that
Right,
too.
that's like total Dr. Frankenstein
You never know.
shit. But I would like to think that somewhere people are working on that, because that would be, and that's like that's the other, I mean, one of the many things about the age we live in that's like completely nuts. It's just like the unthinkable, both good and bad routinely comes to pass. And you're just like, I mean, in the case of, there is now a treatment that, 13, 12 years ago, our
Right.
specialist said was going to arrive, but Callum wouldn't live to see it.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
I just think, it's like a balancing act of whether or not as a species we'll eradicate each other before we evolve to that next place or not, because we could be putting our energy into these particular issues, or who knows?
I've
like
been
playing out.
so trying not to think about all that stuff, because it is,
Because again, it's
maddening.
Oh, I don't think it's worth thinking about, most of the time, because for the way my brain works, it's not productive.
Right. No, right. Thinking about it in the sense of like, why are the people who are purportedly in charge putting all their energy in the exact wrong places? Like what is that? Like, what is
money? Yeah.
Right. Is it really just like greed? It's that like puts your blinders on so that much, like it's crazy. But you have to.
I don't think and those people don't think of themselves as greedy people.
Right.
It's like they have a different narrative. So
Right.
I don't know. Anyway. So what is your life like now? I mean, you run a studio, Magpie Cage, in Baltimore. You live in Baltimore.
Yeah.
You're a dad of a teenager.
Yeah.
A husband, and you just made a solo record. I think it's your first solo record, correct?
Yeah.
You made your first solo record, and you're on tour with your band from 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I guess.
Yeah.
How do you balance all of these things?
I have no idea. I just am trying to I just try to pay attention to it all. And a lot of times it's like spinning plates, and that's, I'm trying to work out a little more practical, I mean, it's possible because I have an incredibly understanding life partner. I mean, that's a large part of it, someone who understands all of these things, But yeah, so I mean, I don't. It's because I don't feel like I planned any of these things. Like I've tended to, the way that everything has developed has just been like trying to tune in when something feels right and then respond to it and try to seize opportunities. So, and I feel incredibly fortunate the degree to which that's worked out, but so things like the studio, I mean, I did have to work to make that happen, but then suddenly the space that I'm in now became available, which is the space where we recorded the For Your Own Special Sweetheart, which was always my favorite studio space, and which, where I began producing records. And
why do you put it in air quotes?
Oh, producing, sure, because who knows what producing is, right? And when I like working
what's
with,
your definition of a producer?
someone who listens and helps.
Yeah.
That's like helps you get where you're trying to go. But I mean, within that context, when I started, so sure, so I produced Texas Is the Reason and Promise Ring and
Compound Red and Faraquet.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's such a loaded term. It carries so much weight in a way.
That's the punk rockness of you.
No, I think, and I remember being there, and with working on Texas Is the Reason. Drew Mazurek was the engineer. So as far as who recorded that record, who's responsible for the sound of that record, Drew certainly. I mean, okay, as we certainly know now, who's responsible for the sound of that record? Number one, the band, right? But I certainly don't deserve any more credit than Drew for how it sounds, sonically. But I deserve credit for telling them when they were singing off key and when they were speeding up their songs and suggesting, things or whatever. But I mean, that's not.
It's important stuff.
Sure, but I just don't want to. But the whole time I was there, I was like, I would really feel good about this if I knew what mic to put on the snare drum and what the routing should be, and to capture the sound of the band and to be a material facilitator of what's happening now, instead of being like your buddy with opinions who noticed when you were singing flat. But I realize it's not. But I'm being self-deprecating.
Yeah,
I'm a little bit like beating myself up.
Yeah, let's look
That's
at.
Just a
let's
normal
historically
mode for
look
me,
at
right?
at producers, right? Like they grew out of the A&R role, where basically at first they were just matching artists with material, right? It was the link between the publisher and the artist,
right?
And then it became something more creative over the years, and then only in our kind of lifetime did engineer producers kind of surface. But before that, it was people like Arif Martin or something, or Bob Thiel produced A Love Supreme, but he didn't record it, right?
Right.
So it's somebody that can kind of just help. Just maybe what I see it as? Somebody that helps when that voice that tells you that your stuff sucks gets into your head, right?
Yeah.
Like, I bet you have to do that a lot with people that are like, fuck, this is terrible, I need to do it again. You're like, no, actually, that was good, don't ruin it.
Yeah, right. That's the hardest thing in the world to do, actually. That's the most is like somehow, because the thing is, like, I feel, and especially over and over again now, when people are taught to be so concerned with some ideal of perfection, and yet time and time again, like, people's best takes are when it's just the basic track, and they aren't thinking about what they're doing, and something wonderful just happens, and then they're determined that they need to do it over. They need to redo that guitar part or whatever, because and just determining what's more, to either be able to find a way to say, no, something really magical just happened, and I know because you slayed me. It's not always easy to make that clear and to convince people that they just did something extraordinary when they weren't trying.
On that note, as an outsider, if your life was like a take, right? You only get one take. Like, you slay me, Jay Robbins, and I think you've done a lot of beautiful things that have really affected me and lots of people that I care about. And
it's weird in this conversation because I realized that the tone, like, I take a tone. This is the first time I've realized this, but talking about this stuff, I take a tone like I'm arguing with somebody. And
you're arguing with the voice, the negative voice in your head.
Totally.
It's like defense. It's like an inner defensive. Yeah. But I'm just saying, man, like, thank you so much for being here, and thanks for everything that you're doing. And I feel like, we were joking about kind of like surfing the wave of life, but your intuition has produced lots of really great things that have affected me and people in my community quite a bit. And it's funny because I'll come and go with different music, and I don't actively listen to Jawbox all the time, but then whenever I come back to it, or whenever I come back to like that first Burning Airlines record, it's like an old friend, and but then I'm viewing it through a new lens, and every time a different every time there's an additional dimension that that is revealed. So
that's a super sweet thing for me to hear.
Thank you.
I really like. I mean, because the thing that I always think about is I'm like, we definitely did the best that we could.
That's all you can do.
And that's what I started thinking. Like I know I've grown a little bit because I'm way kinder to like all those people that that I'm like all the members of like to me and the members of Jawbox and Burning Airlines in my mind of like thinking about what we were trying to do. I like am now talk to those like 20 something and 30 something people and I'm like, you guys really do, which includes myself, and I'm way more at peace about it. I'm just like, whatever it is, you were really giving it everything you had. So kudos, like that's all you can way do. Happier when I look at it that way. It's just like,
I mean, that's how I look at everybody, even like my, I wonder if you're to that point where you see your parents that way.
That's totally how I feel about my dad.
You see what I mean? Yeah. It's not like he's willfully denying you emotional connection. It's just like he has a certain. He was raised a certain way. He has a certain
he had
setting.
an enormous wound. This enormous burden that he was carrying, and like with this incredibly limited skill set. The shitty tools that he had to do a thing that he never thought he could, would live up to. Like he had a kid and he really loved his kid the best that he could do. And that's like, I mean, he was kind of a fuck up, but he was an all right dude. He was doing his best, So, I mean, same for my mom. Right. Exactly. Like, it's like, what more can you do than genuinely do your best? Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. It's not everybody gets there, I guess.
And then when you do your best, the next step is not judging yourself negatively too harshly, I think. I don't know. That's what I'm working on. Well, Jay, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate your show. I think it's, I'm like...
Now all I need to do is get Bill and Kim, and it's like we've done the entire Jawbox story.
Get all four of us, and we'll have a sick group therapy session. It'll be gnarly.
Where should we do it? The 9:30 Club? Food for thought. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks so much, Joe.
The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, please tell a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.